What's up, everyone? It's DSP, and I'm here with a special update, gaming news update. And usually I don't do anything like this, but I actually got messaged by a fan by the name of Riku2005, so thank you, Riku, for sending me this news story. A day or two ago, if you can believe it, this late in the game, on the PlayStation Network, a video was released from Quantic Dream. And Quantic Dream are the game developers of games such as Indigo Prophecy, which was my Halloween special this year, as well as Heavy Rain from earlier this year. And Quantic Dream released this special edition video that basically explains all of the information and all of the video and all of the story elements that were left on the cutting room floor when they were developing Heavy Rain. And it's really funny because when you watch this video, it actually answers almost all of the plot hole questions from Heavy Rain. And I'll get a little bit into it. For example, it completely explains why Ethan Mars has blackouts, what happens during his blackouts, why he wakes up where he wakes up when he wakes up from the blackouts, and why he has origami in his hand. Now, this was the #1 major plot hole in the game that everyone said, what the hell, why was this never explained? It also goes on to explain some additional information about Madison Page, why she can't sleep, why she's an insomniac, always thinking someone's going to kill her. And really, after watching this video, I'll put the link to the video in this description of this video, by the way. It leaves me to say, what the hell? It really does, because if you've watched me and followed me this year, you know that Heavy Rain is one of my favorite games of this year. I definitely thought that, it was one of the most original games of the year. But my #1 problem with the game was the plot holes. Some of the stuff just didn't make sense, was never explained. And at the time, when the game came out back in February, we thought that there were going to be several DLCs released that were going to explain these plot holes. And what ended up happening was basically halfway through the year, Sony said, hey, Quantic Dream, whoa, we'd rather have you develop motion controls for Heavy Rain so that when the PS Move comes out, people will buy the PS Move rather than you work on the DLCs. So drop all development on your DLCs and do motion controls instead. And Quantic Dream basically said, okay, Sony, but understand, we have other projects and things on our schedule, so if we do the motion controls, we're not going to do any more DLCs. We've only released one so far called The Taxidermist, and that's going to be it. And Sony said, yeah, okay, because we like money, fuck you, we don't care about the fucking fans, just go ahead and make the motion controls. And that's exactly what happened. And I already ranted about that earlier this year, so you know I'm not happy about it. You know what I think about Sony fucking trying to suck more money out of its consumers rather than worrying about content and actually satisfying the customer, which is kind of ridiculous because when you have a company, you want to satisfy your customers so they come back. But anyway, I digress. My business background obviously has no standing in what Sony does because they think they're so fucking smart. But anyway, this video, this article from joystick.com shows the video from the developers of Heavy Rain, and they kind of explain some certain things. So what are my feelings about what it explains, and overall, how do I feel about this? #1, Ethan Mars. The biggest plot hole in the game was that this guy loses his son. He has 2 sons at the beginning of the game, both young. He loses one to basically a car hitting him in the beginning of the game. And it's some amazing coincidence because at the time that the son gets hit by the car, the actual origami killer is on the site. He's standing right behind him in the crowd. And so it's like, wow, that's crazy that there would be this guy who's eventually going to kill all these young kids, and here he is watching Ethan as he's at his weakest moment in his entire life, his most emotionally upsetting moment when his son gets hit by a car and dies. Now, if you watched my Indigo Prophecy playthrough, you'll know that the guys at Quantic Dream have done more complex stories before than Heavy Rain. In fact, Indigo Prophecy was a very complex story. It involved the supernatural, it involved psychic abilities, it involved aliens. I mean, it's crazy, just that story of Indigo Prophecy, just off the wall. But honestly, even though it's kind of a crazy story, it kind of works. And we know, if you do a little bit of research, you actually know that Quantic Dream had a limitation of the amount of time they had to develop Indigo Prophecy, and that's why they had to kind of rush the ending. They actually had a better plot in mind, but they didn't get a chance to actually do the full plot they wanted to do because of the time limitations. in Heavy Rain, I really think that they would have had the chance to actually push forward a full storyline with supernatural elements that would have made sense. Now let me explain what I mean. In the real story of Heavy Rain, the uncut story, which you can see clips of in this video, Ethan Mars, when his first son passes away due to that car hitting him, actually gets he doesn't know, unbeknownst to him, gets a psychic connection to the Origami Killer. And a lot of people already might be saying, oh, that's crazy, what the fuck, that's too unrealistic. Well, there have been hundreds of stories, and actually in real life there have been reported cases of people who, when they have the most traumatic experience in their life, whether it's someone passes away, an accident, something like that, they get these abnormal abilities. So that would have actually been a really cool way to explain why Ethan Mars is having his blackouts. In fact, there have actually been stories where people have these traumatic episodes and then they see dead people. Like, if you saw The Sixth Sense, the M. Night Shyamalan movie, that's how the kid gets his psychic abilities. You know, he has a traumatic experience, now he can see dead people. So, this storyline's been around, and maybe it was that Quantic Dream didn't want to say that, oh, this story's been around the block before, but I digress. Let me continue. So what really happens in the real story of Heavy Rain is that Ethan Mars has this crazy, psychological pain in his head. It causes him to have a psychic connection to the Origami Killer, who would make sense, because if you think about it, if you're there on the curb and your son is dead, and let's say that psychic abilities do exist, you probably connect to someone who also has psychological problems, who's involved in the death of young people, and it would probably be the Origami Killer who's standing right behind you. So what happens is, as the Origami Killer in the story goes out and abducts these children and murders them brutally, well, not brutally in some cases, he usually drowns them, but and as he folds his origami, what happens with Ethan is that in the real game, he would have these blackouts, and during the blackouts, he would imagine himself in his old house with his old family, and the house would fill up with water. And he'd be underwater swimming through the house, and everything would be floating around. It was really surreal. You can see video clips of this in the video that I'm going to link. And he looks around, and then all of a sudden he sees his son who passed away during the car accident, and then he would wake up, and he would wake up on this mysterious street. He's like, how the hell did I get here? And he would wake up with origami in his hand. Well, there were two connections there to the Origami Killer. The first connection is that the street he would wake up on, which you really couldn't tell from the game because they pretty much took it out, but the street he wakes up on is the same street where the Origami Killer's brother actually dies early on in the game, or early on in his life, which causes him to become the Origami Killer later in life. And then also, he wakes up with origami in his hand because during his blackouts, he's actually folded the same origami that the Origami Killer does after he kills his victims. So he's got this psychic connection to the Origami Killer. That's why he has the blackouts. That's why he sees water, because he knows that the victims are all drowned. And then he also wakes up where the Origami Killer's brother died and folds the same origami. I mean, it all makes sense. All the plot holes, the crazy blackout plot holes, are answered in the real game. Then also there's another angle with Madison Paige, and her angle is, why does she have these crazy dreams about people trying to kill her? And the answer is because she actually was a war correspondent during the Iraq War, and if anyone who's been in war who knows or has heard reports of people who've been in war, you can be shell-shocked. You can never be the same if you go to war. So that also makes complete sense. Does it make a direct correlation to why certain guys dressed in black are trying to abduct and kill her? No, but it makes sense if, people are never the same. They get mind-fucked when they go to war, and I can understand why something like that would happen to Madison. So, my question is this, and I hope that the fans, and the viewers will also open a dialogue about this, is why would Quantic Dream basically, at the last minute, and if you watch the video, they even say, just a couple weeks before release, we decided to cut all this out of the game. It's like, why would you decide to cut all the explanations for these plot holes out of your game? Like, okay, maybe you want to root your game more in reality. Well, that's fine, but don't just leave the plot holes in the fucking game. Like, I don't understand that. Don't get me wrong, I am probably the biggest fan of Heavy Rain, but I'm frustrated that here we are, 10 months, 9 months later, and we're finally getting the answers to the questions that should have been answered when we were playing this spectacular game. And, you know, if the answers were in the game, I think that most people would have said this is a shoe-in for Game of the Year. But having these kind of questions up in the air and no one ever answering them during the gameplay, and then being promised this DLC that was hopefully going to fill in the holes and was never released because Quantic Dream caved into Sony's demands, really is disappointing. You know, when you write a story, when you think of a story, and you have an idea for a story, yes, some elements might get cut out when the story gets developed, say, for a screenplay for a movie or something like that. And in fact, that frequently happens. And that's why you might get some shit movies that are based off of really good books, really good written word stories. And I can understand that. But this is a game. And a game right now is really a creative medium where people have the ability to have these original ideas, express them in interesting and original ways. And it's really disappointing for me to see an awesome game like Heavy Rain that really, I think it lived up to amazing potential. It took that formula from Indigo Prophecy and perfected it with great graphics, you know, really good music, voice acting, atmosphere, made this really cool detective story kind of turn into something even bigger. And but it left such big plot holes that people said, okay, well, this is like going to see a movie, you know, a caper where you like the story, you know, you like the movie so much that it's okay, you accept the plot holes. But then when you look at a video like this that answers the plot holes, you're like, fuck, man, this game could have actually been bigger and better than what it was, but these guys basically cowered it out at the last minute. They pussied out. And they said, oh, well, the psychic connection is too unrealistic, cut that out of the game, and we don't need to tell about Madison's backstory. Who gives a shit? Cut that out of the game. Why? The game was, what, 8 hours long? It could have been 9 hours long. I mean, that's ridiculous, especially when you have games these days like, you know, New Vegas, Fable 3, games where just the regular plot are 12 to 16 hours long. You're going to tell me that your game was too long? You had to cut something out of it? That's bullshit. So I am disappointed. I'm going to be honest with everyone. I am disappointed that I'm happy that the real plot of Heavy Rain has now come out. I feel like now I understand the full story of the game. And now that the plot holes are answered, I actually do think that the story is complete. And I think that it's a better story. I think that someone having a traumatic event, someone having a psychic connection to someone who's a brutal killer makes sense. And especially in a fantasy atmosphere like this game was. And it would have been a more complete story. It would have, and even I would have even liked it. I would have went a step further. What I would have done is at the very end of the game, when Ethan's trying to figure out, let's say Ethan fails some of the tests. Now, obviously, this has been a spoiler-full video, but I'm going to give some more spoilers now. Let's say Ethan's trying to pass some of the Origami Killer's tests, and let's say in the game, if you want to do like all the positive decisions, you can't pass all the tests. It's impossible. You end up actually doing some bad things or killing some people. So let's say you can't figure out where Ethan's son is at the end of the game, and you know, you get one last chance, because I would even go so far as his dead son shows up and says, Dad, listen, here he is. Go fuck this guy up. Because this is like, you know, that would be the perfect connection for the game. This psychic connection to his dead son, to the Origami Killer. He keeps seeing his son. He feels this amazing guilt for what happened. His son shows up. His son forgives him for what happens and says, go save my brother. That would have been amazing. What an amazing twist ending that would have been to the game, where Ethan made all the right decisions in the game, and because of that, his son shows up and he's able to save the day. But they really dropped the fucking ball here, because probably some asshole in marketing or some fucking VP said, a supernatural connection, that's stupid. And then they fucking caved in and kowtowed to it, just like they did to Sony when Sony said, don't do any more DLCs. So I really hate that. I hate it when a creative mind is squashed and hindered by a bunch of fucking business-like assholes. I hate it, because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And people should just tell them, fuck you, shut the fuck up, we know better than you, we know this is a good story, we're going with it, if you don't like it, blow me, fucking fire the whole company, and then go make another project. And I really get the feeling no one does that, and that's the problem, because that's why the creative mind gets squashed all the time. So, what can I say? Now that we have this video footage, I think the game is complete. We know we're not getting any more DLCs for Heavy Rain, unfortunately, so that's out the window. But I really do think that the game of Heavy Rain is an outstanding game. If you haven't played it yet, I recommend you go either rent it or buy it. It's really outstanding. I loved it when I played it earlier this year. It's still one of my candidates for Game of the Year this year. I'm not going to give too many spoilers as to what I'm considering for Game of the Year this year because that's going to be a video series coming up later in December. But anyway, I'm glad that Quantic Dream released this footage, but I would hope that when they go to make their next game that they don't give in or chicken out, basically. I mean, this is really disappointing when you see the creative mind squandered like this. It would have been a more complete story if these plot holes were answered. Or, on the flip side of that, if absolutely you're told by everyone around you you can't have this supernatural element, then unfortunately you have to cut stuff out of the game. So, find a different way to explain why Ethan Mars has blackouts. Maybe he had these blackouts since his son died, and it's a medical condition that's been diagnosed. You know what I mean? You have to have an explanation. You can't leave open fucking plot holes in your game and expect everyone to just say, oh yeah, we accept this, you know. We all thought they were going to be answered in the DLCs, and then we were basically like bait and switch. You know, oh, you'll be answered, nope, fuck you, because Sony told us to make motion controls. So, you can't really do that. And where it is, that's the most disappointing part about Heavy Rain is that they left these plot holes that everyone thought would be answered and they weren't ever. And now that they're answered, they're like, shit, well, that would have worked great. So, my one plea to Quantic Dream is this. Make a fucking director's cut of this game. In 2011, release this game again, make a director's cut, include DLCs. Yes, I said it. If you put, let's say, 5 DLC mini campaigns in here, like you did with the Taxidermist, which was about an hour's worth of content, people will buy the game again. I will buy the game again. And I'll play the DLCs, I'll review them, but I'll also replay the campaign with the additional content, making the game complete. Stop pussying out to these fucking people who are telling you that you don't know what you're doing, because you do know what you're doing, but these idiots, I know, they're in creative control, they're in these positions of power. I'm tired of this shit. So get rid of them. Fucking tell them, suck a dick, we're going to make this, and we're going to make a lot of money on it, and sure, include the motion controls with it like anyone gives a fuck. No one does. What we want is the DLCs that we're going to add to the content of the game to begin with. So, Quantic Dream, make a director's cut in 2011. Make it for the 4th quarter. Your game will sell. And people like me, the ultimate fans of your game, will support you if you do the right thing. I think that it's worth it to do it. And it's unfortunate that you weren't able to put that stuff in the original game because of assholes. Go ahead and put it in the game, and we will support you. Like I said, I'm putting the video clips in this video. I hope that thousands upon thousands of people see this video and really reach out and see the full story of Heavy Rain, and we'll support this. So, hey, maybe this will be the beginning of something. If any of my fans feel the same way, please comment. Hey, let's start a freaking online petition. Make a director's cut with all the full footage in it with DLCs and make it another release, and we'll buy it again because we like the game so much. And fuck these idiots who think that they know better than the writers. I mean, seriously, it's bullshit. So, that's all I have to say. I had to get it off my chest because it's been kind of bugging me all year. As you know, I've been so pissed that the DLCs got canceled because of motion controls. Now to find out that story elements were cut because of assholes, I mean, unbelievable. So, let's get together, let's talk about this, let's start a community dialogue about it, but anyway, I just want everyone to know the plot holes were answered, but they weren't allowed to be answered in the game. So, anyway, this is DSP. This has been a really impromptu video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope now that you know the full story of Heavy Rain, that it's more complete for you. It definitely is for me. I feel like the story's over now. Rather than having all these open-ended questions, I feel like everything's been answered and is a complete loop. So, alright, if anything else like this comes up, I'll also make videos like this, but usually major gaming news like this doesn't interest me too much, but this was one particular one that just stuck out like a sore thumb, and I had to talk about it. So, alright, that's it, and I'll see you guys later.